Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Can the 25-1 Australian Lucas Browne still compete at the highest level? Actually, let's set the bar a little lower. Can the Australian Lucas Browne still beat a nuggety, tough, British level heavyweight in the form of Dave Allen? It's a good question because potentially it's what we might see. So Browne, he's been taking to social media in recent days, making a number of posts saying what a good fight it would be. And Allen himself, as you can see by one of those responses from Instagram, he does seem to like it as well. And he's also made this post himself on his own Instagram feed.
Hello everyone, just out and out running, getting ready for Big Daddy Browne hopefully, and if not, ready for whoever else. I'm ready for scrapping now. Not right now, I'm tired, but you know what I mean.
So another question is, why Dave Allen and why now? Well, Browne, he's recently stated that he wants to get back into the ring as early as July 4th, I believe, and that he wants to keep fighting on in the UK, where he does believe that he's still got a good support base. I mean, if I'm honest, I actually think after Browne's first career defeat to Dillian Whyte in March, I think a lot of his supporters probably vanished overnight into thin air. And that's not to be mean to Browne, but it's not just the fact that he lost, but it was the manner and the nature of the loss. He went in heavy, he showed no head movement, no defense, he was blocking punches with his face, he looked gassed within a couple of rounds, he looked out of ideas from the get-go. It was a truly dreadful effort, which culminated in a highlight reel KO with Browne eating the canvas face first. Timber! And it was at this point I think many of us thought, yeah, well, this guy, he's almost 39. He's been inactive, only had a few rounds before this fight in the last couple of years. Looked like a shell of his former 2016 self when he won the WBA regular title. And I think a lot of us were thinking it's time for him to hang it up. But for whatever reason, either money or Browne truly believing that he's got something left in the tank, he's decided to stick with it, stick with boxing, and he's vowed to be back to his best. And back to his best, what does that actually mean? And we've also had, with all of this, these statements from Browne recommitting himself, public declarations fully committing to his training now.
Today is the first day of the new journey for me, the journey of not f***ing around while I'm here in Perth, etc.
And he's also had a bit of a come to Jesus moment about what went wrong, as this post from his social media feed shows. It was what we were all saying at the time, but it took him a couple of weeks to come out and actually admit what had gone wrong. And clearly from the previous clip, he said he hadn't taken his training seriously. And that in itself, you know, I've got major questions about that. You know, if he's a professional heavyweight boxer, this is his livelihood, and he's not putting any effort into his training, why did he think he was going to go over to the UK and just KO Whyte? I mean, it's sort of beggars belief, really. So while many of us were rightly sceptical, and I think rightly sceptical about his future prospects, he and his management team, they've clearly been working out, well, who's available, and I guess more importantly, who's available in the UK. Who's got a decent profile and who can offer a decent payday but's beatable? Apart from Dave Allen, who's built quite a profile on social media, very affable guy, he's got a profile that is well above his 12-3 record, also 2 draws there. His profile is way above what it should be, but he's built himself well. He's been promoted quite well too. But it seems to have been a good combination. Very affable guy. He's done a lot of the legwork himself. Besides him, there's not many guys that fit the bill, that are available, decent profile, can give Browne a decent payday. I mean, there is one guy, as a laugh, I'm tempted to say, David Haye. I mean, he might be interested in that work against someone like a Lucas Browne, but I actually think he would only fight someone like a Lucas Browne if Lucas Browne beat a Dave Allen and sort of clawed some of his marketability back. But there does appear to be will from the fighters themselves to get a fight made. And often that is half the battle. But the other half, and we've seen this before with Browne, is it's settling on the money. And I think Browne may actually still believe he can command a decent payday. Probably more than he's actually worth now. And even in spite of his recent performances, he does still think he's a draw in the UK. I mean, that remains to be seen. So it will be interesting to see if the fight can be made. And to be honest, if it is, I don't actually know who I would pick. I mean, saying that a few months ago, it would have seemed a little bit crazy. We would have thought, well, it's a complete mismatch. Browne should beat Dave Allen. But I think in March, we did see how far Lucas Browne has slipped. I mean, even if he has a great camp now, truly comes in shape, we're not going to see a shades of Huey Fury type performance in the ring. Even in his prime, his footwork and speed, they were just okay, and technically he's never been great, and he doesn't really move his head a whole lot. And this sort of clip that he recently posted about focusing on his technique, that demonstrates what I'm talking about there, about the head movement and the technique, coming forward, straight lines, zero head movement. But he might be able to crib some speed, some mobility back if he does come in lighter. But we shouldn't expect miracles. Browne is now 39. And Browne shouldn't expect miracles either, even though he is promising them. But what he does have, and he's always had it, he's got heavy hands. He's got power in both hands. And it's a shame he was so out of shape, so woeful for the White fight, because he really only had a few bursts where he actually let his hands go. And White, he was easily able to block those punches because he saw them coming from a mile away. And there was one point there where White was like, okay, I'll just see what he's got. And he was like, geez, is that all? But this is where it gets really interesting for me in terms of the context of a Dave Allen fight. Dave Allen, often referred to as a punching bag, he can take a punch. Actually, he can take a battering and hold up relatively well. We've seen it before. And we also know that Allen himself, not a great technician, he does have a tendency to smother his own work. But in terms of skill, if I'm looking at Browne and an improving Dave Allen, Allen might just have the better skills than this current version of Lucas Browne. And if he is able to take Browne's punches in the early going, I could actually see him winning rounds on the back of his boxing and even potentially stopping a Lucas Browne late on. I mean, for me, a couple of months ago, I would have said, well, actually, it's a mismatch like I mentioned. But Allen, he has been improving. He's been getting better. He's been shedding weight. He's been in shape. And he's shedding the punching bag reputation. Lucas Browne, he's on the slide right now. We've seen it. So at this point, while David Allen is British level, firmly British level, Lucas Browne is probably at the equivalent level. A fight with Dave Allen might actually tell us if he's there or potentially worse. We'll have to see. But in many respects, it would shape as a really good fight, potentially a very competitive one. And should Lucas Browne get a really good win and get a rebound win, come back, look good, he could be in the mix for, other decent paydays, good fights against okay opposition on the British scene. So think someone, maybe a Derek Chisora. If Browne looks good, you could see how they could sell that one. I'd favour Chisora in that. I mean, the rumours from sparring was he was really torching Browne. But I guess the other side of the coin is, Browne seems to have some of these grandiose ideas about what he's going to do to come back, get back to the mountaintop, all this sort of thing. But even a good win, it may only lead him to fights in future against guys the level of maybe a Sam Sexton or a Gary Cornish, someone of that ilk. And I'm not actually sure where he would go if he lost to someone like Dave Allen. I mean, you'd like to think, well, he'd go, okay, it's time to hang it up. But maybe he won't. Maybe it would lead him being fed to guys like, prospects like Nathan Gorman, Nick Webb, Daniel Dubois, etc. And I think Browne is going to reach that point of his career quicker than he probably thinks. But I guess some of it, how desperate does he need the money? And that will probably dictate how long we see him on the slide for. You never like to see some of these guys going longer than they should, but some of them, for whatever reason, they have to. And sometimes it's not just about, pride or whatever. It's out of necessity because they have to pay the bills. Some of these guys are not very good with money. But in terms of Allen and Browne, I actually like this fight. I like it quite a lot. I could see this being a decent little fight on an undercard, you know, maybe July, August. I think there's a couple of Matchroom shows. I mean, Alan is still with Matchroom, I believe. There's still some shows they've got later this year that potentially it could slide onto. I guess it depends what else is out there at the moment in terms of what's already organised, because this is not a topping of the bill. It's not a chief support type fight. It's sort of mid-level on a card somewhere. And that will probably dictate how much money either fighter gets as well. So I think, you know, like I said, Browne has to be realistic, because he may just have to take a less than stellar payday this time to potentially get a better one next time. But I do think that Dave Allen, he would have a good shot of beating Lucas Browne. And that is if he can take the Australian's best. And I actually think he probably could. So some of it probably depends how much has Lucas Browne got left in the tank. And judging by what we saw recently, not a lot. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.